The stars shimmered against the vast darkness as the massive ship approached Earth. Its sleek design reflected sunlight in ways that made it seem almost alive. People all over the world stopped what they were doing to watch news broadcasts of humanity's first contact with an alien species. Captain Greg Mason stood at attention on the landing platform, his blue uniform pressed perfectly for this historic moment. Next to him, 5 other military officials and 3 scientists waited as the alien ship's landing ramp extended downward. "Remember," General Harris whispered, "we represent all of humanity today." Greg nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. 15 years in the Earth space defense. Force hadn't prepared him for this moment. The aliens that emerged called themselves the Dravari. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but stood nearly 7 feet tall with sleek, bluish skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their faces had large, dark eyes that never seemed to blink. "We come in peace and friendship," the lead Dravari said in perfect English. "We have observed your world for some time and believe you are ready to join the galactic community." Within days, the Dravari were meeting with world leaders, offering technological advances beyond human imagination. Faster than light travel, medical techniques that could cure cancer, clean energy systems that would end pollution forever. Greg was assigned as the military liaison to the Dravari. His job was to learn about their defense systems while showing them Earth's military capabilities. "They're offering us everything we've ever dreamed of," President Bowman said during a private briefing. "This will advance humanity by centuries. Overnight." Commander Alan Frost, Greg's superior officer, wasn't convinced. "They're too perfect," he said when they were alone. "No conditions, no demands, just gifts? That's not how first contact should work." "Maybe they're just nice," Greg suggested, but he understood Alan's concerns. In nature, nothing came without a price. 3 weeks after first contact, Greg met Lisa Collins, one of the leading xenobiologists assigned to study the Dravari. She had short brown hair and intense green eyes that seemed to notice everything. "Look at this," she said, showing him microscope images of Dravari tissue samples. "Their cellular structure is fascinating. They have triple helix DNA and muscle density 5 times greater than humans." "What does that mean for us?" Greg asked. Lisa's face grew serious. "It means they evolved as apex predators. These aren't the bodies of peaceful farmers or philosophers. Everything about them screams hunter, not diplomat." Greg looked closer. "At the images, have you shared these concerns?" "I tried. The science committee is too excited about their technology to listen to biological concerns," she said. "They called me paranoid." Despite these warnings, Earth's governments eagerly signed treaties with the Dravari. The aliens helped establish humanity's first interstellar outpost on a mineral-rich moon orbiting a nearby star. Thousands of humans volunteered to go, excited to be part of this new chapter in human history. Greg was assigned to oversee security at the new outpost. The day before his departure, Lisa arrived at his apartment. "I need to show you something," she said, looking over her shoulder as if worried about being followed. She handed him a data tablet. "I've been comparing the Dravari language patterns to their behavior." Greg scrolled through her notes. "What am I looking at?" "Inconsistencies," Lisa explained. "Their language has dozens of words for hunting, tracking, and consuming prey, but almost none for concepts like equality or cooperation. And look at this footage." She played a video showing Dravari during an official dinner. When they thought no humans were watching, they displayed different body language, more predatory, with quick, sharp movements. "They're hiding their true nature," Lisa whispered. "And I found references in their database to something called the Vexery Dominion. I think the Dravari might be just one part of something bigger." Greg felt a chill run down his spine. "I leave for the moon outpost tomorrow. I'll see what I can find out there. Be careful," Lisa said. "And watch how they treat the smaller alien species they're introducing us to. I have a theory they're showing us a carefully controlled version of the galaxy." The journey to the moon outpost took 3 days aboard a Dravari ship. Greg spent the time observing the aliens closely, noting how they always seemed to position themselves at higher points in rooms, Looking down on the humans, the outpost itself was impressive. A sprawling complex of domes and research facilities housing over 500 humans and about 50 Dravari. Greg's first week was uneventful as he set up security protocols and got to know the staff. On the 8th day, he noticed something odd. A small transport ship arrived carrying what the Dravari called service assistants. Small, timid aliens, with 4 arms and large eyes filled with what looked unmistakably like fear. Who are they? Greg asked his Dravari guide, Vexinar, the Tellurians. They are grateful to serve. Their species has been under our protection for centuries. Vexinar explained smoothly, but that night, Greg saw the Tellurians being marched to the lower levels under guard. Their movements were those of prisoners, not willing helpers. He followed, at a distance, using his military training to stay hidden. In a secured area not on any official maps, he discovered cages. Inside were not just Tellurians, but 3 other alien species he'd never seen before. Greg quickly retreated and sent an encrypted message to Lisa back on Earth. You were right. Something very wrong here. They're keeping other species as prisoners or pets. Need more info on Vexari Dominion. 2 days later, before Lisa could respond, the research vessel Horizon disappeared without warning while exploring the edge of the solar system. The Dravari expressed concern and offered to help search, but Greg noticed they didn't seem surprised. That same night, he overheard 2 Dravari speaking when they thought they were alone. The harvest assessment is complete. One sighed, this world will provide excellent resources. When will the Dominion arrive? Asked the other. Soon, the humans suspect nothing. They're like all the others, naive until the end. Greg's blood ran cold. He needed to warn Earth, but communications were suddenly experiencing technical difficulties. As he worked to find a way around the communications blackout, a message from Lisa somehow got through the last transmission before all contact with Earth was cut off. Massive unknown ships appearing at edge of solar system. Not Dravari design. Much larger, military mobilizing but unprepared. They called themselves Vexari and say they've come to claim their hunting grounds. Greg, the Dravari were just scouts. The real predators have arrived. Greg looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was facing a threat it couldn't possibly understand yet. And he was trapped here, witnessing the beginning of what could be the end of humanity, unless he could find a way to fight back. 6 months had passed since first contact with the Dravari. What began as humanity's greatest moment quickly turned into its darkest nightmare. The massive Vexari ships had appeared suddenly, their hulls black as space itself, bristling with weapons that made Earth's most powerful missiles look like toys. Greg Mason had escaped the moon outpost by stealing a small Dravari shuttle. He spent 3 weeks in space, barely surviving on emergency rations, before managing to reach Earth. But the planet he returned to was changed forever. The Vexari attack had been swift and calculated. Major cities around the world lay in ruins, billions dead or missing. The remaining humans had scattered to hidden bunkers and remote locations. Greg stood at the entrance of what had once been a mountain military base in Colorado. Now it served as one of the last command centers for Earth's resistance. His uniform was tattered, his face gaunt from months of hardship. Captain Mason, a voice called out. Commander Alan Frost emerged from the bunker entrance. He had lost an arm in the initial attacks, now replaced with a crude metal prosthetic. We thought you were dead. Nearly was, Greg replied. The Dravari were just scouts. They planted monitoring devices in all their gifts to us. Inside the bunker, screens showed satellite images of Vexari ships harvesting Earth's resources. Worse were the footage of human collection centers where people were herded into massive transport ships. They're taking people off-world, Alan explained. We don't know where or why. I do, a woman's voice said. Lisa Collins stepped forward. From the shadows of the command room, her face bore a fresh scar across her cheek. They're harvesting us. Lisa pulled up images on the main screen that made Greg's stomach turn. This footage was smuggled out by Susan Wright, a civilian engineer who escaped from Colony Delta. The video showed humans in large glass containers, sorted by age and physical condition. Vexery moved among them, selecting some and discarding others. The Vexery Dominion is a coalition of predator species, Lisa explained. They've been doing this for thousands of years to dozens of species across the galaxy. They farm prey species like us for resources. Resources? Greg asked, dreading the answer. Food, labor, genetic material. Entertainment? Lisa said flatly. We're livestock to them. Commander Frost slammed his good hand on the table. We've tried everything against their ships. Nuclear weapons barely scratch their shields. Conventional weapons are useless. Not completely useless, a new voice joined in. A tall man with tired eyes and a patchy beard entered the room carrying what looked like modified human and Dravari technology merged together. I'm Eric Russell. I was developing quantum computing systems before all this. Now I'm working on something else. Eric placed the device on the table. The Vexery technology has a flaw. Their shields operate on a frequency pattern we can disrupt if we get close enough. Greg looked at the device with the first spark of hope he'd felt in months. How close? Too close, Eric admitted. Suicide mission close, but it would work. The meeting was interrupted by alarms. A scout reported Vexery ships approaching the mountain range. Everyone moved quickly to evacuation positions. They keep finding our bases, Alan said as they hurried through underground tunnels. It's like they can smell us. Maybe they can, Lisa replied. From what I've studied, their sensory abilities are far beyond ours. The group escaped through a hidden exit just as Vexery ships began bombing the mountain base. 3 armored vehicles sped away into the night, heading for separate destinations to divide their forces. Greg traveled with Lisa, Eric, and a dozen soldiers to a backup facility hidden in an old mine shaft in Nevada. The journey took 3 days of careful travel, avoiding Vexery patrols. At the new base, they found more survivors, including Kate Phillips, a former Special Forces operative now leading guerrilla attacks against Vexery ground forces. We hit them when they're separated from their main groups, Kate explained during a strategy meeting. They're tough but not invincible, and they're arrogant. They don't expect prey to fight back effectively. Eric worked day and night on his weapons designs, testing them against Vexery technology they'd captured in small skirmishes. Greg often found him asleep at his workbench, surrounded by tools and alien components. My family was in Boston when the first wave hit, Eric explained. One night when Greg brought him food, I designed these weapons thinking about my wife and daughters every second. A month later, their base received a transmission from survivors in Europe. They had captured a wounded Vexery commander during an ambush. Lisa immediately requested the prisoner be brought to their facility. This is our chance to understand them better, she insisted. The prisoner arrived heavily sedated and restrained. The Vexery was massive up close, nearly 8 feet tall with mottled gray-green skin and rows of sharp teeth. Its 6-fingered hands ended in curved claws. Lisa spent days studying and attempting to communicate with the creature. When she finally emerged from the makeshift lab, her face showed a mix of disgust and excitement. I've learned something crucial, she told the command team. The Vexery don't see us as intelligent beings at all. They literally cannot comprehend that prey could strategize or organize against them. It's a blind spot in their psychology. How does that help us? Kate asked. It means they underestimate us completely, Lisa explained. They see our resistance as random animal panic, not coordinated attacks. And there's more. They're telepathically connected within their hunting packs. They coordinate through a shared consciousness. Eric looked up from his work. So if we could disrupt that connection... Exactly, Lisa nodded. We could make them vulnerable. That night, as Greg looked over maps of known Vexery positions, a young soldier rushed in with news. One of their scout teams had managed to hack into a Vexery communication relay. They'd discovered something unexpected. Earth wasn't the only world fighting back. There are other species resisting, Greg told the others. If we could contact them, maybe form an alliance. Commander Frost, who had arrived the previous day from another base, looked skeptical. How? We can barely communicate across our own planet with most of our satellites destroyed. We use their own network against them, Eric suggested. If we can access their communication relays once, we can do it again. As they debated the possibility, alarms sounded throughout the base. A lookout reported multiple Vexery ships approaching from the east. They found us again, Kate said, grabbing her weapons. Everyone to evacuation points. But Greg noticed something odd about the approaching ships on the monitor. Wait, those aren't Vexery designs. They're different. Lisa looked at the screen, her eyes widening. Those are Tellurian ships, the species I saw being held captive at the moon outpost. The radio crackled with an incoming transmission. Voice spoke in broken English. Humans, we are escaped slaves. We fight Vexery too. Let us join you. Greg and the others exchanged looks of surprise and the first real hope since the invasion began. They weren't alone in this fight anymore. The war to reclaim Earth from the galaxy's most feared predators had just entered a new phase. A year had passed since the Vexery invasion began. The Nevada base had become the center of an unlikely alliance. Humans worked alongside 3 alien species who had also escaped Vexery control, the 4-armed Tellurians. The insect-like krill and the peaceful plant-based flora NS. Greg Mason, now promoted to Admiral of Earth's remaining defense forces, stood before a holographic map showing Vexery positions across the solar system. Earth remained under blockade, with massive harvester ships taking resources and people daily. The resistance forces hid in underground bases, striking when possible before disappearing again. The Vexery still don't understand what they're facing, Lisa Collins explained to a group of human and alien leaders. Her laboratory had expanded with help from alien scientists who brought valuable knowledge about Vexery biology. They can't comprehend that prey species could organize effectively against them. The captured Vexery commander remained their most valuable source of information. Through a combination of translation technology and psychological techniques, Lisa had managed to extract crucial intelligence. Their entire society is built on predator-prey dynamics, Lisa continued. For thousands of years, they've harvested species across the galaxy without meaningful resistance. We're the first to fight back effectively. And we're getting better at it, Kate Phillips added. The Special Forces leader had just returned from a raid on a Vexery supply depot. Her team had destroyed 3 ships and captured valuable technology. Eric. Russell entered the room carrying what looked like modified weapons. Over the past year, he had combined human innovation with alien technology to create devices capable of damaging Vexery ships. The prototypes worked, he announced, setting the weapons on the table. We hit their patrol ships near the old Sacramento colony. Their shields failed exactly as predicted. The mood in the room lifted. Small victories had been rare. A Tellurian named Zickville stepped forward. His 4 arms moved in excited gestures as he spoke through a translator. My people have completed the communication array. We can now contact resistance cells on other worlds harvested by the Vexery. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. If Earth could coordinate with other worlds fighting the Vexery, they might stand a chance at something more than just survival. Later that day, Greg sat with Lisa reviewing data from the latest Vexery movements. They're pulling ships from Earth orbit, he noted. Moving them to the outer system. Why? Lisa studied the patterns. They might be responding to attacks elsewhere. The Tellurians mentioned resistance growing on several worlds. Or it could be a trap, Greg said. They might be trying to lure us into open combat. Their discussion was interrupted by Kate rushing into the room. We intercepted a Vexery transmission. They're bringing something called a World Harvester to Earth. From what we can translate, it's designed for final resource extraction. Final extraction? Greg asked. Lisa's face paled. They're done hunting. Now they're moving to complete planetary harvest. They'll strip Earth of everything: atmosphere, oceans, all life forms, even the planet's core. The news spread quickly through the base. That night, human and alien leaders gathered to form a plan. They couldn't evacuate Earth. They lacked sufficient ships. They had to find a way to stop the World Harvester. Eric presented a daring proposal. The captured Vexery ship we've been studying has navigation data showing their main fleet positions. If we can get a team on board the World Harvester before it reaches Earth, we might be able to sabotage it from within. That's suicide, Commander. Frost objected. The World Harvester will be the most heavily guarded Vexery ship ever built. Not if they don't see us coming, Kate countered. We've learned their sensor blind spots. And they still don't expect coordinated attacks from prey species. The planning continued for days. Teams were assembled, a mix of humans and aliens with complementary skills. They would use a captured Vexery shuttle, modified to mask life. Signs aboard. The night before the mission, Greg found Lisa in her lab studying brain scans of the captured Vexery. "I've found something remarkable," she said without looking up. "The Vexery communicate telepathically within their hunting packs. That's how they coordinate so effectively. But this connection has a frequency we can potentially disrupt." "Could we use that against them?" Greg asked. Lisa nodded. "I've been working with Eric on a device that generates interference on their telepathic frequency. In tests with our prisoner, it causes disorientation and confusion. If we could deploy it across a wider area, we could break their coordination during battle." Greg finished her thought. "This could change everything." The mission to infiltrate the World Harvester launched the next day. Kate led a team of 12, 6 humans and 6 aliens, aboard the modified Vexery shuttle. They carried Eric's newest weapons and Lisa's telepathic disruptor device. Greg remained at the base, coordinating with other resistance cells across Earth. If Kate's mission failed, they would need to mount a desperate last stand. 3 tense days passed with no word from the infiltration team. Then, just as hope began to fade, a transmission came through. "This is Phillips," Kate's voice crackled over the radio. "We're inside the World Harvester. It's even bigger than we thought, like a moving city. We've planted disruptors at key points but haven't been detected yet. What's your status?" Greg asked. "We've identified their central control system. The Vexery have never faced sabotage before. Their security is focused outward, not inward. We can do this." The transmission cut off suddenly. Hours passed with no further contact. Greg ordered all resistance forces to prepare for the worst. If the World Harvester reached Earth, they would throw everything they had at it in a final stand. Then, the base's sensors detected a massive energy surge from the outer system. All eyes turned to the monitors as readings showed the World Harvester's power systems fluctuating wildly. "They did it," Lisa whispered. The celebration was short-lived. Long-range scanners showed Vexery battle cruisers converging on the crippled World Harvester. Kate and her team would have no way to escape, but then something unexpected happened. Dozens of unidentified ships appeared near the World Harvester. They engaged the Vexery cruisers with weapons similar to Eric's designs. "Who are they?" Commander Frost asked, staring at the screen. A transmission came through on all frequencies. A female voice spoke clearly. "This is Captain Susan Wright of the free ship Liberty. We bring allies from 7 worlds. The prey are hunting now." Susan Wright, the engineer who had escaped Colony Delta and provided the first evidence of Vexery harvesting. She had somehow united resistance forces from multiple worlds. Within hours, Kate's team was rescued from the damaged World Harvester. They returned to Earth with valuable Vexery technology and navigation data revealing the locations of Vexery homeworlds. For the first time since the invasion began, the resistance leaders allowed themselves to feel real hope. The Vexery had never faced a coordinated multi-species resistance before. They had never imagined their prey could become predators. As Greg looked around the room at humans working alongside their alien allies, he realized that humanity's greatest strength might be something the Vexery could never understand, the ability to form bonds even with those different from themselves. The war was far from over, but the hunters were becoming the hunted, and Earth would lead the way. 3 years into the war against the Vexery, humanity had transformed from prey to hunter. The sabotage of the World Harvester had marked a turning point in the conflict. Now Admiral Greg Mason stood on the bridge of the Freedom, a warship built from captured Vexery technology. Around him, a crew of humans and aliens worked together with practiced efficiency. The ship was part of the Allied fleet, a collection of vessels crewed by former prey species from across the galaxy. Each race brought unique skills to the fight. The Tellurians with their technical expertise, the Krill with their ability to navigate complex spaces, and the Florans with their remarkable healing abilities. "We're approaching the Vexery supply depot at Proxima Centauri," announced Zickville, the Tellurian navigator. His four arms moved across control panels with practiced precision. Greg nodded. "All ships prepare for battle formation." The fleet consisted of 15 ships, a small force compared to Vexery numbers, but they had one crucial advantage. The Vexery still couldn't understand how prey species could coordinate so effectively. This mental blind spot made them vulnerable to ambush and strategic attacks. Lisa Collins had joined the mission as science officer. Over the past 2 years, she had refined her understanding of Vexery biology and psychology. Her research had led to the development of weapons that specifically targeted Vexery weaknesses. "Remember," Lisa reminded the crew, "the Vexery communicate telepathically within their hunting packs. The disruptors will break their coordination. When they can't think as a group, they make mistakes." The plan was simple but daring: attack the supply depot, capture critical resources, and free any captive species being held there. Intelligence suggested thousands of beings from dozens of worlds were kept at such facilities before processing as the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They immediately activated the telepathic disruptors, devices invented by Eric Russell based on Lisa's research. The effect on the Vexery ships was immediate. Their typically perfect formations became chaotic as communication between vessels broke down. "It's working," Greg said, watching the Vexery ships move erratically. "Launch fighters. Target their sensor arrays first, then weapons." Kate Phillips led the fighter squadron. Her voice came through the communication system as her ships engaged the enemy. "Their coordination is completely broken. They're fighting as individuals, not as packs." The battle lasted less than an hour. Without their telepathic advantage, the Vexery proved surprisingly vulnerable. 7 enemy ships were disabled, and the rest retreated in disarray inside the supply depot. Kate's team found cages filled with captives from at least 15 different species. Among them were hundreds of humans taken during the early days of the invasion. "I never thought I'd see other humans again," said a woman named Linda as Kate helped her board an evacuation ship. "They kept telling us no one was fighting back, that Earth had surrendered. They lied," Kate told her. "Earth leads the resistance now, and we're winning." The liberated captives brought valuable information, locations of other Vexery facilities, details about Vexery fleet movements, and most importantly, the location of a major Vexery command center in a nearby star system. Back on Earth, Eric Russell had continued improving his weapons technology. When the fleet returned with the freed captives, he presented his latest creation to Greg and the other leaders. "I call it Project Prometheus," Eric explained, showing them schematics of a device unlike anything they had seen before. "It doesn't just disrupt their telepathic communication, it feeds false information into their network. We can make them see things that aren't there." "Psychological warfare," Greg said, understanding immediately. "We can make them think they're surrounded when they're not, or make them ignore real threats." Eric nodded. "Exactly. The Vexery evolved as apex predators who never needed to fear being hunted. Their minds literally cannot process being prey. This exploits that weakness." The Allied Council, representatives from all species fighting the Vexery, approved the plan to target the command center. It would be their most ambitious operation yet. The mission was set for 3 weeks later. During preparation, Greg visited Lisa in her laboratory. She was studying new data about Vexery sensory systems. "I've discovered something fascinating," she told him. "The Vexery don't just hunt with their eyes and ears. They have specialized organs that detect fear. They literally smell terror in their prey, and it triggers their hunting instincts. How does that help us? Greg asked. Lisa smiled. Because we're not afraid anymore. When we approach with confidence instead of fear, it confuses them. And with Eric's Prometheus device, we can project artificial fear signatures to lead them into traps. The attack on the Vexery Command Center began with a small group of ships, broadcasting fear signatures that drew Vexery forces away from their base. Meanwhile, the main fleet approached from another direction, completely undetected. They're taking the bait, Kate reported from her scouting position. Nearly 80% of their defense fleet is pursuing the decoys. Greg gave the order to attack. The Allied fleet struck hard and fast, deploying Lisa's telepathic disruptors and Eric's Prometheus devices simultaneously. The few Vexery ships remaining at the command center fell into complete disarray. The battle for the command center was fierce but brief. The combined forces of humans and their allies overwhelmed the confused Vexery defenders. For the first time, a major Vexery facility fell intact into the hands of the resistance. The information they recovered was beyond valuable. It was civilization-saving. The command center's databases contained complete maps of Vexery territory, including the locations of their homeworlds and breeding facilities. They never expected to need security for this information, Lisa explained as she reviewed the data. In their entire history, no prey species has ever reached one of their command centers. Most shocking was the discovery that the Vexery Dominion consisted of only 3 actual predator species. They had subjugated more than 50 other species over thousands of years, creating the illusion of an unstoppable empire. Greg addressed the Allied Council with this new information. We now have the opportunity to strike at the heart of their territory. Not just fighting defensive battles, but taking the war to them. Commander Frost, who had lost an arm in the early days of the invasion, voiced the concern many felt. We don't have the numbers to attack their core worlds directly. We don't need to, Greg replied. Look at this. He displayed a map showing supply lines between Vexery territories. They've extended themselves too far, trying to harvest too many worlds at once. If we cut these main supply routes, their empire begins to collapse. The plan was approved. The Allied fleet would split into smaller, faster groups to strike at critical Vexery supply lines. Meanwhile, Eric and Lisa would continue developing technologies to exploit Vexery weaknesses. As the meeting ended, Greg looked at the faces around him, human and alien alike, all former prey species now united against their common predator. 4. The first time in their history, he told them, the Vexery are learning what it means to be hunted. And we're just getting started. The war had reached its decisive phase. Humanity and its allies were no longer fighting just to survive. They were fighting to win. 5 years after the Vexery first attacked Earth, Admiral Greg Mason stood on the bridge of the flagship Victory, looking at a holographic display of their target, SciFiPrime, the homeworld of the predator species that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. The massive planet glowed red on the display, surrounded by defense stations and warships. Never thought we'd make it this far, Commander Frost said, standing beside him. The veteran officer's metal arm gleamed under the bridge lights. From nearly extinct to taking the fight to their homeworld, Greg nodded. The journey had been long and brutal. Earth had lost billions of people, and many colonies had been completely destroyed. But humanity had survived and evolved into something the Vexery had never encountered before, prey that learned to hunt better than the predators. Fleet status report, Greg called out. All ships in position, Admiral, Zikvo replied. The Tellurian's 4 arms moved efficiently across the control panels. The Allied fleet is ready. 327 vessels from 52 formerly subjugated species. It was the largest fleet ever assembled by the former prey species. Ships of all shapes and sizes, crewed by beings who had once been hunted by the Vexery. Now they had united under Earth's leadership to end the Dominion's reign of terror once. And for all, Lisa Collins entered the bridge, followed by Eric Russell. Both had changed over the years of war. Lisa's face bore scars from a Vexery attack 2 years earlier, Eric had lost a leg during a mission to free captives from a processing station, but their minds remained their greatest weapons. The final version of Project Prometheus is ready, Lisa announced. This isn't just a disruptor anymore. It's a complete override of their telepathic network. Eric nodded. Once activated, it will broadcast directly into the Vexery hive mind. For the first time in their evolutionary history, they will experience what it feels like to be prey rather than predator. The plan was daring but built on years of research and smaller successful operations. They would strike at multiple points in the Vexery defense network simultaneously, creating openings for a main assault force to reach the planet's surface. There, they would deploy the Prometheus device at the central telepathic relay that connected all Vexery across the galaxy. Kate Phillips joined them, now a general commanding the ground forces. My teams are ready for deployment. The Krill Scouts have identified the best landing zones. Greg addressed his officers one last time before battle. What we do today isn't just for Earth, it's for every species that has suffered under Vexery predation. We end their reign today, not by becoming like them, but by offering something they never gave their victims, a choice. The battle began with synchronized attacks across the Vexery defense grid. The Allied fleet had learned to exploit every weakness in Vexery tactics. The Predators still couldn't comprehend that prey species could coordinate so effectively. Their responses were predictable to those who had studied them for years. Their formations are breaking, Zikval reported as the initial attack succeeded. They're falling back to secondary positions. Greg gave the order to deploy the ground forces. Hundreds of small, fast ships broke through the weakened Vexery lines, heading for the planet's surface. Kate led the main assault team, with Lisa and Eric accompanying them to oversee the deployment of the Prometheus device. On the planet's surface, the Vexery were thrown into confusion by the bold attack. They had never faced an invasion of their homeworld. In their entire history, no prey species had ever dared to hunt the hunters. Kate's team fought their way through Vexery defenders to reach the central telepathic relay, a massive structure at the heart of their capital city. The building pulsed with energy that connected Vexery minds across the galaxy. This is it, Lisa said as they entered the facility, the nexus of their entire civilization. Eric quickly set up the Prometheus device while Kate's soldiers held off Vexery counterattacks. This will take a few minutes to calibrate, Eric explained. It needs to match the exact frequency of their network. Above the planet, the space battle continued. The Victory took heavy damage as Greg positioned the flagship to protect the ground teams. Hold position, he ordered as the ship shuddered. Under enemy fire, they need more time. In the relay center, Eric finished the calibrations. Ready on your command, he told Lisa. She hesitated for just a moment. This will affect every Vexery in the galaxy simultaneously. We're about to change an entire species forever. They gave us no choice, Kate reminded her, firing at approaching Vexery soldiers. They never gave any of their victims a choice. Lisa nodded and activated the device. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The attacking Vexery froze in place, their bodies trembling as new sensations flooded their minds. For the first time, they experienced fear, true, primal fear, the kind they had inflicted on countless other species throughout the facility. Across the planet and eventually throughout Vexery space, the Predators dropped their weapons. Some fled in terror. Others simply stood immobilized, overwhelmed by emotions they had never evolved to process. It's working, Lisa whispered. They're feeling what it's like to be prey. The fighting stopped as the Vexery forces fell into disarray. Without their telepathic coordination and faced with emotions they couldn't handle, their resistance collapsed. The Allied fleet secured the planet within hours. 1 week later, representatives from 52 formerly enslaved species gathered in the Great Hall of the Vexery capital. Greg stood before them, next to Lisa, Eric, Kate, and Commander Frost, the humans who had led the fight when all seemed lost. Today marks the end of the Vexery Dominion, Greg announced to the assembled delegates. But not the end of the Vexery species. This was the most controversial part of their victory plan. Many wanted the Vexari exterminated for their centuries of predation, but humanity had insisted on a different approach. "We won't become what we fought against," Greg continued. "The Prometheus device has permanently altered Vexari psychology. They can no longer function as apex predators. They now understand fear, empathy, and cooperation, concepts that were alien to them before." A Vexari representative was brought forward, one of the first to accept the new reality. The once fearsome predator looked diminished, humbled by the experience of vulnerability. "We offer the Vexari a choice that they never gave others," Greg said. "Join the galactic community as equals, not predators, or be confined to your homeworld under permanent quarantine." The Vexari delegate spoke in a shaky voice. "We choose to join. We wish to learn this new way. It would take generations for the Vexari to fully integrate into peaceful society." Many humans and aliens remained skeptical that true change was possible. But Earth had insisted on giving them the chance that had never been offered to humanity. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the final battle, Greg stood with Lisa on a hilltop overlooking a valley on Earth where a memorial to those lost in the war had been built. New cities were rising from the ruins of the old. Humans worked alongside alien allies to rebuild their world. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Lisa asked, watching children playing in the distance, human children. Alongside young Tellurians and other species who had chosen to make Earth their home, Greg nodded slowly. The easy path would have been to destroy them completely. The harder path was to break the cycle of predator and prey. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our weapons. It was our ability to imagine a different way. Lisa smiled. From prey to predator to something better than both. Far above them, ships from dozens of worlds moved peacefully through Earth's orbit, no longer divided between hunters and hunted, but equals in a galaxy forever changed by humanity's refusal to accept extinction.